Welcome to the Firepreneurs podcast. I'm your host, Jeff McDole Jr.
And I'm Bennett Grove.
Between us, we have 20 years of firefighting experience.
And over 15 years of experience building, growing, and leading small businesses.
Each episode, we get after it by discussing leadership, life, and development.
We'll also unpack the wins and losses that we've experienced along the way.
You ready, big dog?
I'm ready, my man.
Let's get it. Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 1 of the Firepreneurs podcast. Today, we're going to talk about why in the HE double hockey sticks would you want to start a business?
Good question.
Yes. So before we get going, we're going to give you some quick bios about ourselves. Myself and co-host here today, Bennett Grove, kind of let you guys know a little bit about us and talk about the overall topic and kind of why we got into a business. So I'll let Bennett take over from here and let him kind of explain a quick bio about himself.
So my name is Bennett Grove. I own Fire Dogs Junk Removal. I started it in 2011 on my days off shift from the fire department. So I'm a full-time firefighter. My last shift is actually on September 11th of this year. And so I've been a fireman for 17 years. I was in the Air Force as a military firefighter for 6 years. I was on active duty, and I was also in the Guard. And so the term Fire Dogs comes from being a military firefighter. And so that was my inspiration for the business and that we started in 2011 because I wanted to take some of those fire department roots, some of the principles that I learned in the military, and bring those to a business and then run a business with that type of mindset and with that type of structure, but also allowing for the creativity. And so my entrepreneurial journey really started with, when I was like 12 years old. I mean, I was the kid knocking on doors, mowing lawns with a buddy of mine that I grew up with in Speedway. And, we would go and, get $5 a lawn, and we would go, rake leaves and make $5 a lawn. And so, only paying for Big Macs back then,
That's right. Bubble gum.
Yeah. But I also, since growing up in Speedway, one of the things that was also unique about, always having that entrepreneurial spirit, when I hear those stories about other people, I look back at my own journey, and I was the kid, walking down Crawfordsville Road with a radio flyer, going up to people that, had too much to drink. I'm like, hey, you know what? I can carry that cooler for you. Just throw it here on my radio flyer. Give me $5, and they'd be like, oh, look at this little kid, So then they'd give me their cooler. And at the end, once we got to the entrance of the Speedway, they would, take their cooler and give me a tip. And I thought I was rich, I was like, oh, this is awesome, And so then the lemonade stands happened on race day and all that good stuff. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, but when I went to college and I went for 2 years, 9/11 happened, Iraq happened, and it was a lot of inspiration about why I joined. And so I went in the military, and but I kept that entrepreneurial spirit. I remember there was times where I was, doing extinguishers. I was in extinguisher maintenance during one of my stints in the military, one of the few months, and I remember thinking to myself, like, man, this could be a business. You could recycle extinguishers and do hydrostatic testing. And I was like, oh, wait, there's a ton of fire protection companies. But I just always had that in my mind, Right. So when I got out of the military, I still had, I got out of active duty. So I went active duty, got out of active duty, and I went back to college at Indiana State. And I had 2 years left in my degree. And so that's when I transitioned from active duty to the Guard. And immediately I got back into hustling, basically. And I found some dilapidated buildings near Indiana State's campus, and I was like, you know what? I got my VA loan from being a veteran and serving in the military. I bought a duplex that was kind of run down, that needed some work. I lived in the crappiest unit, and we rented out the decent unit and made money from rented out the unit to college kids. And so I had a couple of roommates that lived with me in the crappy unit and kind of worked on it. And so that was kind of my first, back into being an entrepreneur once I got out of the military. But it also led to the inspiration of what became Fire Dogs, because I rolled that into another project. I bought this condemned building, condemned by the city of Terre Haute. And I bought it from this guy that was just getting ready to get started on it. And I was like, hey, I want to buy this. I want to fix it up and rent out to college kids. And he kind of laughed at me. Gladly will sell it to you. Yeah, he was older, and at the end of his career, he's retired. He was just doing this to get other properties.
Right.
And so I bought this building, and we gutted it, down to the studs. And I always needed help with hauling because I was a full-time college student. At this point, I was a full-time firefighter at the guard base as a civilian. So they had a state fire department. Mm-hmm. And so I was there as a full-time firefighter as well. And I used my personal annual and vacation leave to go to college, like to go to courses. The chief was really flexible with me. So I'm a full-time college student. And full-time at the fire department. I'm also in the guard unit there at the base. So I worked on the weekends with the guard. And here I am buying this building, and I already got one building where I'm, renting out my apartments to college kids who I'm always having to track them down to pay rent on time because the mom and dad are paying for it,
Right.
And so I bought this building, and so I'm really worked and stressed and maxed the load. But I knew I needed like a hauling company, some guys to help me. I could not find anybody reliable. Like I still talk about this guy to this day. He's a great guy. Roy, if you're out there listening ever, which I doubt you will, but if you are, I enjoyed working with you, but man, you could not show up on time. And some of the guys you brought, I'm sure, were high on meth because they came and went, and somehow they wouldn't be there one day. The next day they would be there. But man, we got through it. We got all the hauling done. We did the demo, and I did a lot of work myself with them. But I always told myself, I was like, man, this is a business. Like if you could make this more professional,
right,
and more reliable and steady, like this is something. There's something to this. Well, fast forward, I'm graduating college. I just got a job at Fort Campbell Fire Department, and I was getting ready to leave Terre Haute, and I ended up selling. At this time, I had built my apartment business up to 6 buildings and 21 apartments, and I had a couple partners with some guys that were there in Terre Haute, and so I ended up selling my interest in that rental property company to those guys, and I made, I walked away with about $60,000, and I took that money, paid off my student loans, and I took what was left and eventually started Fire Dogs Junk Removal. And so Fire Dogs Junk Removal at the time, like I said, side gig on my days off shift from the firehouse. And along the way, from 2011 when we started to today, we went from a side gig to now we have 2 locations, one in Indianapolis, one in Fort Wayne. We have 7 trucks in Indy. We have 2 in Fort Wayne. And we're opening a location in Bloomington at the end of this year. So the business is growing. We're over a 7-figure business now, but, at the time when we started it, it was really just about trying to get a side gig,
Right.
But I began with somewhat of the end in mind. I knew that when we started the business that we wanted to build it as if it would be a big company one day. Similar like what Michael Gerber says in the E-Myth, like you build it as if it's going to be franchisable, even if you have no desire of ever franchising it, because that encourages you to build systems and processes.
Right.
And so we always did that. So with our branding and everything else, we always began somewhat with the end in mind. I think that's going to tie into our topic today. But that's a quick bio about me. There's a lot of stuff in between that we'll unpack on our episodes together. That also some of those wins and losses in the 9 years of building the business in between, which there are plenty of the losses. We can talk about some of that too, and some of my entrepreneurial ADD that I had along the way. But I'll kick it back over to you. So you guys need to know a little bit about Jeff. So Jeff was our first full-time employee in Fire Dogs. He was just out of college, and he came to work with us. He was our first full-time team member, and I'll let Jeff take the story over from there.
Yeah, so I went to college, St. Joe, played baseball there, played sports through high school, always kind of had like that leadership mentality. Definitely more of a, follow what I do more than a rah-rah kind of cheerleader kind of leader. And always had that drive to just be a leader. It just felt natural for me. Always wanted to serve too. So even through college, I had a desire to do military. Came really close to joining the Guard out of college. Applied to a few police departments. So I'll touch on that later in my bio. But was working as a teacher. Actually, is what my degree is in. And had a mutual friend that I was working with at that school, Eric. And Eric said, "Hey, I got a buddy with a junk removal company, needs some summertime help."
Sucker.
Yeah, I got sucked in. So, but Eric introduced me to Bennett. We had a phone call. I remember it was probably about, 4:35 in the evening. Yeah. Bennett said, "When can you start?" I said, "Tomorrow." He said, "Great, see you at 7 a.m.
That's right.
That was
needed people.
Yeah, that was late spring, early summer of 2012, and we've been connected ever since then. As Bennett said, I was the first full-time employee. Desire to want to be a firefighter or work in the services was another thing that drew me. I knew I was going to be working around these guys that were in that career, and I could learn from them. by doing that. So kind of indirectly, a few years later, some things with the business happened, which we'll unpack again. But some divisions that we had grown had sold, and Bennett and I had separated, not through choices of our own necessarily. But I went down some other career paths, still in the waste industry, and it was kind of time to join the fire department. I applied to several, ended up getting the number one that I wanted, Indianapolis Fire Department. Very grateful for that. And as I said, Bennett and I had always stayed in contact. So once I graduated from that academy, he said, hey, let's sit down and grab some lunch and talk about how to work together again. And that was late 2019.
Yeah.
Getting my years right. So worked at Fire Dogs about 2012, 2015, roughly about 4 years. We separated for a few years, but about another 3.5, 4 years, and now we're back to working together and working together on here at Firepreneurs. So that's a quick rundown of me, kind of how I got into the fire service indirectly through and somewhat directly through Fire Dogs. Had some mentors in the department that came through Fire Dogs and worked with us there too. But it really shows kind of the drive that both of us have to get into business and what we want to accomplish. So one of the big things that we talk about, and it's a huge undertaking to do this, not just as a firefighter in general, but if you're going to start a business, it's a large undertaking. Add in firefighting as your main career, and it gets into quite a bit. Yeah. So either way, whether you're a firefighter or not, these conversations we have will definitely apply. But you know, we've gone through these things as Bennett said. It started as a part-time gig, and we've grown it from here. So, but the first thing before you take a step into this, I think, is knowing why. Why in the HE Devils hockey sticks do you want to do this?
Yeah, we were kids from the 80s, so, you know, we grew up hearing HE double hockey sticks.
That's right.
So, yeah, like why in the HE double hockey sticks would you want to start a business? Because 9 years looking back on just this business, and then going back even further to that, when I first really started getting into real estate, like there was all kinds of obstacles and challenges. And at the time, you know, I wasn't even married or had kids when I started with the real estate business. So I had all that time to burn. You know, and then once Fire Dogs junk removal started, you know, at that point I was getting married, you know, didn't have kids yet, but like I could already see one of the biggest skills and obstacles is time management.
Right.
And then when you add in the fire department schedule, I mean, there's a finite amount of time that you have to work with each day, and everybody in the world has the same amount of time, right? So the people who excel or get pushed back are those that struggle with the ability to manage those blocks of time. So yeah, why would you want to start this business? Because you're going to have struggles. You're going to have pain. You're going to have frustrations. You're going to have moments where you see your ugly side, you know, and that's why I think it's important, you know, episode 1 for us to talk about, like, why would you want to put yourself through this? So we'll talk about, like, you know, some of the darker sides and the good questions to dig into. And then we'll kind of get into some of the pros and cons, you know, so we'll get into positives too. Look up, like, what the opportunities are. So yeah, why in the HEW hockey sticks would you want to start a business? I think about it like this. Looking back, I know that we kind of have two very similar philosophies.
Yes.
I call it having a bucket of whys, which, you know, isn't an original expression. I actually heard that from a guy named Iron Cowboy. He's been on the Team Never Quit podcast, and he has a documentary on Netflix, and it's this maniac, but he's really cool too, that did 50 triathlons in 50 states in 50 days. Like, it's crazy when you say it out loud, right? Right. But yeah, so he talked about having a bucket of whys, and I was like, man, that hit home, like, for me. And like, so when I sum it up now, like, because that's what I've been doing, but I just wasn't putting it in those words. So I talk about bucket of whys. Jeff talks about having 5 whys. So we'll kind of talk about both of those. So I'll dig into mine first.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go for it.
So there's these moments in entrepreneurship, and when you're running a business or you're leading a small team, where you're going to have a crisis of confidence, or you're going to have a fork in the road, you know, whatever cliche applies that has to do with, I'm up against it, right? I've got these decisions to make. And in those moments, you may also start to doubt, like, why you're doing it. Like, man, I've only been in business for a month, the phone's not ringing. Or I've been in business for 6 months, the phone was ringing, and now it stopped ringing because it's August and everybody went back to school. Am I going to be able to make payroll? Or it's a year in, things were going great when the weather was good, but now that it's winter and Christmas is here, and holy cow, I don't know if I have enough money to get through the winter and make it to next season.
Right. Like, and have people stay on board with it. So now it's not just you, it's other people involved.
And those are moments where you've got to be able to dig deep. And you hear these expressions like dig deep, roll up your sleeves, get down to it. Another way of thinking about that, though, is why? Why would I continue to do this? Why am I going to push through? And that question can be answered by something that you have as a motivation to get into business in the first place. So, for example, let me talk to you about some of my whys. I wanted to start a business because I wanted to make money. Shocker. Like, nobody wants to talk about that. Like, can we, though, for a second? Like, we get into business because we all want to make money. You know, and I think that has to do with, why do you want to make money? What do you want to do with it? Well, you have dreams, right?
Exactly.
And that's like one of our books that we always talk about, The Dream Manager. You know, you have these dreams and you're supposed to be able to pursue them and make them come true. And money helps with that.
Capitalist economy.
Yeah. So, you know, one of the motivations, one of my whys is to make money. That's not my most important why, but it is one of the ones that for some reason people think making money is bad. And there is people who make money and do it for the wrong reasons, but making money isn't bad in and of itself. That kind of ties into money management, which is another topic we'll get into. But making money as one of your whys is okay, in my opinion. But my most important why is my family. So I wanted to start a business even before I had kids. I knew that I wanted to start a business because I knew that there was going to be a lot of leadership and life lessons that I would learn along the way running a business that I would be able to teach my kids. At that time, I didn't know they were both going to be boys, but I knew that I would teach my kids, daughter or son, through my work and through my work ethic and through the perseverance and resilience that comes with building a business. Because I was under no illusions that it was going to be easy and that I was going to be making lots of money the first year. Yeah. Like I knew that wasn't going to happen. So one of my whys is my family, not just my kids, but my wife. I wanted to, we're men. And if you're a woman listening to this, that you probably have some of this as well, but I can speak from the perspective of a man that we have this carnal desire to make sure that we can provide.
Yes.
And that desire is real. And so we want to always be showing and demonstrating to our woman that we are strong, we are men, we are capable, right?
Yeah, and it goes along with the era we grew up in. Like you said, we both grew up in the 80s and early 90s, and at that time, it was still very much so. A man is the breadwinner of the house, and you take care of your family. So
right, and in 2020, there's plenty of women that can take care of themselves without men, and so it's changed. But I can tell you from a man's perspective that we still have that desire to be a good provider, to be a good leader in our house, to show our wives that we are still worthy. So there's another one of your whys, right? And so here we go. We're going into our bucket of what I consider my bucket of whys. And then I can tell you about me and my passion. And I didn't always know that this was my passion until I started to get into business once I got into the military. But I knew from an early on stage that I wanted to build leaders. And I think that's because I was always kind of either in or close to a leadership position in my life. And in sports, in different organizations, I was a vice president of the National Honor Society in high school, and then I was the vice president of the student council, and I was a captain on sports teams at times. Not to say that I was like a squared away kid, because there was times I screwed up and did a lot of dumb stuff too, But,
right.
But I always kind of strived for those leadership positions. I wasn't always good at it, and I'm still always trying to get better at it. But and then go on to the sports teams. I go into college, and I always tried to lead from the front with my actions, even when I wasn't designated a leader. So I wasn't a captain of a team, but I always tried to lead with my actions, And then
exactly,
I went in the basic, and I was a element leader, which is kind of like a squad leader, And I wasn't at first, but with my actions, the TI one day comes up to me, right, and I'm sitting there doing PT, and it's early in the morning, and everybody's like intimidated and scared out of their gourd, right? And here comes this guy, he's getting ready to chew my ass, and I'm like, oh no, you Grove, stand up, and I'm like, okay, and he goes, to the front, you're the new element leader. You back of the line, you're out. So like I was always kind of thrust into these situations, know. And then I went to the fire academy at Lewis F. Garland, and I got named the class leader for the Air Force, the guys that are actually staying in the dorms in the academy. Like I was the class leader of my class. We had another guy, Sergeant Felt, who was our actual class leader, but he was a 35-year-old guy that was in the reserves, and so he didn't have to stay with us. So I was in charge of the guys like in the dorms, you know. And then I went to my active duty career. Like I was just always kind of being pushed and put in these leadership positions, and like you either have to perform or you're going to be very clear that you're not performing. And so I just kind of developed this, desire to always meet the challenge. And so one of my whys is kind of twofold. It's one, I want to build leaders. I think that's what I'm here to do because I've learned so much in my time as, in the military and the fire service and in running businesses. Like that's what I'm passionate about. But the other one is that I like challenges. I like the challenge of building, not just building leaders, but building a company and trying to build an organization and do it in a way that is reflective of, of our views as a company and in my views, and try to, influence the world in our own little way, because junk removal is not sexy work, but it's honest. And it's not just what you do, it's the team that you build doing it and the people's lives that you impact and change. And so one of my whys is I know that every day I'm under scrutiny from my team and that they expect me to be steering the ship and be competent to steer the ship.
Yes.
And so one of my whys is to always be that example or do my best to be the example, because there's times where I fail because I'm human, but when we're talking about whys, then you're starting to dovetail into people depending on you. And as you build a company, not a side gig, a company, then you're transitioning to like people are depending upon you. You are responsible for making sure they have a job, that they have hours, that they have pay, even if the business is struggling.
Yes,
right?
Correct.
And so as the leader, there's times where you're not going to get paid because you have to make sure somebody else gets paid. You're going to tap into your savings account to put money into the business because people are depending on you to get paid, right?
Yeah, and there's a lot of personal accountability. I know we've had these conversations before of, it maybe even dipping into like refinancing your house and putting your name on the line. If something happens, they're coming after you,
right?
Especially after 2008 when a lot of the hit the economy. A lot of personal guarantees come with owning a business.
That's right. They sure do. And rent is due every day. So, so we're getting into what I call the bucket of whys. So I've given you some examples of those whys. Let's talk about how you pull into that bucket, right? You're facing a difficult situation. You've got a team now. Say you're running a junk removal business. You got a truck. You've got customers that are calling. Things are starting to click. You got a full day's worth of work lined up. And this is the first day where you got to be off the truck in like 6 months, right? It's a big win for us small business owners that came from the field up. You finally get off the truck and you got somebody else running the truck for you that day. So you don't have to do the physical work. That's a big win.
Yes.
Guess what? The 6 jobs on the calendar that are all scattered all across Indy because you didn't schedule them right? Or whatever city you're in. It's going to be a long day. And then one of those guys calls in sick. He's not sick. You may think he's not sick. He might actually be sick. But guess what? You're not going to let those customers down, right? So you're going to go in there and do the hard work. And then your significant other's looking at you like, this was the day that you were supposed to get some time with us. This was what you were supposed to be at. And then so in those moments, you're kind of like, crap, I'm letting down my family. I'm letting myself down because I built myself up to be in this moment where I was finally going to get a reprieve, or I was going to be pushing the business. I felt like we were growing, and then boom, you're back on the truck.
Right.
And you got to do it, right? And in those moments, you're like, what in the hell? Like, I want a day off.
Yes.
But you got to go reach down in that bucket of whys and pull something out. People are depending on you. Yep. That was one of my whys. I'm reading it right now. People are depending on you. And then boom, you go do the work. It may be the thing that pushes you over the edge to go do the work. That might be the motivation that you need. And so you reach into your bucket of whys to get you through those many little obstacles that you have. And so that's a small example. Let's talk about a bigger example. Like you talked about, banks and financing and notes and right. And so now you're in a position where your business is growing. Maybe you got 3 or 4 trucks. Maybe you financed a couple trucks and you have some equipment loans, right? And cash flow is tight. And you're coming down the barrel of December, January, February, which in a services business in the Midwest and not just junk removal, businesses slow down during that time for the most part.
Gets a little cold here.
And it gets a little cold. And so metaphorically, it gets a little cold in your bank account too. And so you're sitting here like you're stressed. You're waking up early, you're going to bed late, you're short maybe at home with your spouse or your girlfriend or whatever, or your
Let me add something during that time too that most people don't realize is it's a very short day. And I know working through those times, you wake up, come into the office, it's dark, you're driving home, it's dark. There may be days you actually do not see the sunshine. It's a very dark period in general.
It can be. Can be. Literally as well as metaphorically.
Yes.
Jeff just pointed out. So, you have these moments and then you realize it, right? You look in the mirror and you see, like, man, I'm not proud of what I'm doing right now. I'm being short, I'm frustrated, and I'm working long days. I'm stressed about payroll. I don't know if I'm going to make it. And you're trying to make you're learning money management on the go, right? And you're like, how am I going to keep going? Like, why am I going to keep going? Why would I keep doing this? Like, at what point do I just break and move on? And then you got to reach in that bucket. And you got to look at some of those whys that you started with. I wanted to build a business because I wanted to teach my children work ethic, entrepreneurship, how to use your wits and just go out there and make it happen as opposed to waiting maybe for people to make it happen for you, right? Like teaching them principles that they can go out and use in the world. Not everybody has to be a leader. Some people can be followers, and that's okay because the world needs both, right? But as a parent, I made a decision that I wanted to teach my children through my work ethic and running a business some of these other skills. And so on those days, you look in your bucket and you're like, oh, yeah, that's why.
Yes.
That's why you look in the mirror and figure it out, right? And in those moments, I'm here to tell you, that's when you got to look in the mirror and you got to figure it out with yourself. Because so the answer to some of those questions is actually you getting in the way of yourself, right? And the bucket of whys can be that truth serum, like, why does this keep happening to me? Why do I keep getting up early, going to work, coming home late, super stressed out, kind of short, money's tight? Like, why are these things happening? And the answer may be looking right back at you in the mirror, because you've created a bottleneck. You didn't create systems and processes. You've gotten so deep in tunnel vision that you're forgetting that you have to go out and do some sales and marketing, and you're getting so wrapped up in the minutia of the day that you're not getting out of the office and doing the work, right? There's a series of things that could prevent you from, or cause you to be the bottleneck. But what I'm saying is that bucket of whys can be the thing that makes you look in the mirror and realize, one, that's why you keep going, and two, you may be the reason why you're in this mess, right?
Yeah.
So, like, those are just a couple of examples of the bucket of whys analogy that I like to use from, because I think that sometimes you need a different why for the context of the situation. Depending on what's going on, you may need a why to get you over a small hurdle, or you may need a why to get you through a big hurdle. But depending on the context, there may be different whys. So I talk about bucket of whys. I'm going to stop for now, though. Kick it over to you, because I think this is a good segue. My bucket of whys, you have asking 5 whys.
Yes.
So you can give our listeners something concrete in terms of those of you listeners out there who like your top 5, or I need 3 reasons, or this, whatever. Jeff's getting ready to hit you with it.
Yeah. So I learned this through some training that I've gone through, in leadership training and some leadership books, is asking 5 whys to a question. This doesn't just have to be for starting a business. You can use this for problem solving. When you get into and you come into an issue, asking why 5 times kind of gets you to the root. So start with our question: why would you want to start a business? And a lot of people, if they want to admit it or not, a lot of it is money, whether it's just some extra pocket change to carry around or whatever it may be. So ask why again. You said money. Why do you want more money? I want to take vacations. Okay, good answer. Why do you want to take vacations? There's your third why. I want to enjoy life and I want to see the world. Okay, ask why again. Why do you want to do that? And maybe you don't have an answer to that and you got 3 layers deep. But if you continue to ask that, you'll peel back the layers and kind of find your root cause to what it is. And it's like I said, you can use this for problem solving or starting a business, issues you come across in the business, and it'll kind of lead you into that deeper meaning, so to speak. So this is kind of what I use a lot of times. You know, in business, like you said, there's always going to be something. It's not an easy feat to be managing or owning or running a business, and you're always going to have something that comes up. So when that comes up, you can use this exercise, ask yourself why, but then you can also look back. This kind of becomes your long-term vision and goals, so to speak. So a lot of mine was money, of course. Always helps to have it in like I said, a capitalist economy. Kind of needed to do some things. But mine is also my children. I want to set them up for success, and whether that is getting them into a business that they can eventually one day manage and take my spot out of, or if it's just having the money to send them to the proper training that they want, whether it's trade schools or college, whatever it may be. I want to be sure that I can do that for them and provide for them. As you said, we both have a drive to provide for our families. And then your whys can always be flexible too, right? So I wasn't always a firefighter. So now being a firefighter, I want to enjoy my retirement with my pension when I get there. Didn't always have a pension. Now I'm a firefighter. It's something I can also look forward to. And being a part of a business, I can, earn extra money, make sure that I can put more money back for retirement so that my wife and I can enjoy our retirement together when I get there, as opposed to just living off of a pension, which I can't complain having a pension. That's not bad by any means.
Right.
But a little extra money when you're retired and not having a consistent paycheck necessarily definitely doesn't hurt at all. So the other why is, and some people ask, we worked together and I came back and we're working together again after a break. And some people ask, why? Why did you go back? And some things that we'll delve into in later podcasts. I took some notes as you were talking. We have alignment in some of our goals. So one of those big ones is alignment and developing leaders. It's something that I've always enjoyed doing. Even if I do something successful, I've always been one to give credit to other people. I understand I'm not the only one that made something happen. Never works that way. You always have help in that, and that's stuff we'll get into later, but both of us want to build leaders. One of my big role models is Bill Walsh. So if you look at his coaching tree, that's kind of my terms for success as a leader, having a huge lineage tree or a large coaching tree such as Bill Walsh has, and then you develop those leaders who in turn develop more leaders, and it just branches off that tree that we've helped develop these people. And we're both the same way that we enjoy giving credit to those people. It's not, look what I did, look what they did. They did the work. I just kind of provided guidance and they did it. So that's one area we definitely align and want to do in our business ventures.
Yep.
The other is problem solving. I was just talking to the guys the other day that I hated math when I was in school. Hated it. I was bad. I didn't want to do any math problems when I was in school. I enjoy math now as an adult. Kind of weird. But I see it as problem solving. It's a challenge that I have to solve, and I kind of enjoy working through those problems and seeing the problems head on and finding the solution. It's the same thing in business or life in general. You see a challenge, there's no way around it. You have to figure out how to solve that problem. And I enjoyed doing that, kind of seeing the challenge head on. There's those people always like, oh, I work well under stress. And obviously being as firefighters, we were trained to work under stress. So that it is something I enjoy and always felt like I've done well at under stress, kind of remaining calm and even keeled and not getting real emotional and worked up. And just every once in a while, I'm a hard worker, so I may put my head down and power through and make some mistakes. But again, that's another problem that comes up. I made a mistake. What's that? What issues did I have? What did I not do right? Something else to kind of look at yourself in the mirror, as you mentioned. say, what can I do better? Where can I improve? I made these mistakes. What can I do different to be better? So a lot of that comes from getting alignment, having the same goals, as we said. If you do have a partner or anybody that's going with you, a spouse, a significant other, making sure you guys are in alignment and on the same page, because it will put a lot of stress in that relationship. If especially if you're not on the same page, it will definitely put a lot of stress.
I got a question for you then.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go down this road of, firepreneurs.
Yes.
So for clarification, full disclosure, Jeff does not own Fire Dogs Junk Removal. I own Fire Dogs Junk Removal, but Jeff owns Firepreneurs, part of Firepreneurs with me. We're in that together, right? So you are now an entrepreneur that is also a full-time firefighter.
Correct.
So you're a firepreneur in the way that we're going with this, right?
Exactly.
So
exactly.
Let's kind of tailor this a little bit to perhaps our audience. I think it's applicable to whether you're going to be an entrepreneur or not, or if you're going to be a firepreneur or not. I think that either way, this question is good to ask yourself, the 5 whys. So let's go down this road of 5 whys.
Yeah.
I'm John Doe firefighter. I'm full-time, and I'm thinking about starting a side gig. What are the whys you would ask me? I'm like, hey, McDole, man, I know that you're working in services company for like the last, good grief, what is it, 10 years now? 9 years for you too?
Yeah.
And you're also own your own, side business. I'm thinking about getting into it too. I'm going to start XYZ business. I'm going to cut grass. What would you ask that person, John Doe firefighter? What would be your 5 whys in that example?
So I would I'd ask the general why at first. Why do you want to do this? What's important to you? What makes you want to do this?
Man, dude, I just want to make some extra money with our schedule. There's days that we get our butts kicked, and then I'm tired and I don't want to work. But then there's days where I know that on my days off I can squeeze in some extra work, and I want to make some extra money.
Okay, well, good. What do you want to use that money for? Why do you want to make more money?
I just want to be able to have some extra spending money, basically. Be able to go take some trips, be able to go out to nice restaurants without worrying about what I'm buying on the menu. Just extra spending money.
Okay. Why do you want that extra spending money? Why do you not have enough now?
Well, with our income as firefighters, we only work. People always say we only work 24 on, 48 off, or 48 on, 72 off. But our income is capped for the most part, and we don't get paid. With an aside, Bennett Grove's personal opinion is teachers, firefighters, police officers, EMS, nurses, who am I leaving out? Service members, veterans, don't get paid enough. Okay? If coronavirus taught everybody anything, it's that pay teachers more. Okay?
Right.
So yeah, I'm a firefighter. Answer your question 3. John Doe firefighter. I'm answering as John Doe firefighter. I don't think, we just don't make enough money as firefighters. Eventually I'm going to have family and kids, and I just know the extra money will help.
Okay. So why would you want to do your own side gig as opposed to picking up extra shifts?
You know what? I guess it's because I like doing, I guess with my extra time off, I want to do some other stuff that I don't do in firefighting. I kind of like cutting grass, and I like running machinery, and, it keeps me busy, and it's nice to be outdoors and working. I guess that has something to do with it.
Okay. So a business is a big undertaking as opposed to just working extra shifts. So you can come into work, get some extra money, get that extra pocket change that you want, as opposed to all the headaches of running a business, dealing with customers. Is that something that you want to do?
Well, hold on a second. You didn't say I had to deal with customers. So I kind of get your point here with these questions, right? And that's why I wanted to kind of do it, is because I think that your philosophy here on the 5 whys, I think whether it's the bucket of whys or the 5 whys, you're challenging people to think about what motivates them and what is going to be going on in their mind when they're making these decisions. And so I think that segues into a little bit of beginning with the end in mind.
Yes.
And why would you start a business? Why in the HE double hockey sticks would you start a business? I think if you decide to, these questions that Jeff just asked, some of the bucket of whys that I talked about, those are good, thought-provoking conversations to have. should you choose to move forward, I think it's important to begin with the end in mind. So where do you want yourself to be in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5, 10? Having some of those conversations with yourself maybe or other people is also important, because what you end up finding in that conversation, whether introspective or with someone else, is you'll find some whys.
Yes.
Inevitably. You'll find some, this is why I'm going to do it. Well, I'm thinking about the end in mind. So my end in mind is, if I'm a full-time firefighter, is I just want to have a side gig, run a couple crews, make some extra money each summer. At the end of the year, I want to make sure that I cleared an extra 30 to 40 grand or something to that effect, right? Okay, perfect. You just defined what your end is. So if you're a firepreneur and you're a full-time firefighter and you want to run a business and you want to make sure that you have an extra 40 grand at the end of the year for you to do all these other things, that's called beginning with the end in mind. So set that as your objective, and now you can start building the steps and building blocks to get there. So you're not a firefighter. You're an entrepreneur. You're somebody who just wants to start a business. The thing at that point that you want to be doing is beginning with that same end in mind. So I want to run a business. I want to be able to pay myself a livable wage and build the company to where it's 7 figures and I make an extra $100,000 a year in profit on top of what I pay myself. Okay. That's a good thought experiment. We're beginning with the end in mind. You want to build a 7-figure business. That's here. Now, let's surround ourselves with the right influences and maybe meet with some people that have actually done that and see what that looks like. Because when you see what that looks like, you'll start to understand that it's not easy. They got there with hard work. And then you got to start asking yourself, well, do I want to put myself through that hard work? Do I want to go and build a 5-6 truck operation, to get to 7 figures? And maybe at that point you're like, man, I don't want to manage 20 people. I'd like to maybe I don't need to be 7 figures. Maybe I just want to make 6 figures a year. Okay, well, that's different, because you don't need to be a 7-figure business to make 6 figures a year. Right. So then what we're talking about, though, is the exercise of beginning with the end in mind, establishing what you want from the business, what you want the business to do for you, the quality of life you want it to provide. Because then you can start to unravel the steps it takes to get there. And along the way, you'll answer and have to ask yourself why. You'll end up finding out some of your whys. So I think the asking 5 whys, the bucket of whys, it leads to this conversation of beginning with the end in mind.
Yeah, and I think it's important, too, that you kind of briefly touched on talking with other people and bringing other people into that conversation, because we both have done it quite a bit. Your entrepreneurial mind, entrepreneurial ADD, as you call it.
I've been guilty of that.
Yes. So you have these ideas, and as I said, we've both been there. I can do it better. Maybe you're in a company and you see how it's being run, and I can do this better. I know more than they know, and your theories and your ideas sound fantastic until you actually put it down on paper and have to actually do it.
And have you actually even put it down on paper?
Right.
Maybe
so,
that's a why. Maybe
yes. So I think talking with people, and if you can, especially talk with people that have been through it, and they can kind of humble you, right? They can kind of bring you out of the clouds and back down to the ground and say, that's great. It's a great idea. It's a great drive and initiative to want to do that. But here's reality. Here's what you're going to have to do to get there. And again, hopefully those people are willing to help you get there. But knowing what it actually takes to make it happen will definitely uncover reasons, and if it's really worth it to you to go that route, or if maybe it's a different route for you.
Right. I mean, and the reality is, too, I mean, it's easy for us to sit here and talk about this. You have to put yourself in situations where you're going to push yourself and challenge yourself, and you still just have to go out there and do it. And so even by all this preparation that Jeff and I are talking about, you still may not go out there and get there. You may set, like some people say, I'm going to build $1 billion business. I've heard that. I mean, that might sound crazy to some people, but I've actually heard entrepreneurs say that. And currently their business is, $2-3 million a year, but they have that goal, but they're setting the BHAG, right? Is what you hear it called a lot in terms of business development stuff, but it's called that big, hairy, audacious goal. They may set that, but they don't actually know what it takes to get there. But the reality is they still have to go out there and do it. And it may not be doable, and so you may set these goals and never put the thought into it. But I can tell you that if you don't at least put the thought into it and put yourself in the situation, you're definitely not going to do it. Right. So it's okay that you might not get there, but the fact that you're thinking about it and you're putting it down on paper, like, you can will things into action.
Yes.
You can talk things into existence. And we've talked about this. Like, if you set enough goals and you write them down and then you revisit those goals, the likelihood that they happen are increased.
Exactly.
And that's one of the things too with your bucket of whys, like, write them down. So like if your why is that I want to make money because I want to be able to go and I want to go to Europe, I want to go to Greece, I want to go and travel, I want to do these things. Okay, great. Let's pause for a second. Write those down.
Yes.
Okay. I want to go to Greece. Sweet. By when? I want to go to Greece before I turn 40. Awesome. I want to go to Greece before I turn 40. Goal. Write it down. Maybe in parentheses, write down a why, right?
Right.
Now you wrote it down. It's one of your whys. That will keep you motivated when that one day maybe you want to Netflix and chill on Friday. Maybe not do that. Maybe put in the extra work. Maybe write that email to that lead that you got. Maybe write down that system and process that's going to free you up and give you back some more time,
Yes.
which is one of the things we come back to, time management. So, but writing down those goals, I want to have a 7-figure business. I want to have a $10 million a year business. I want to have a $100 million a year business. Or I just want to be a millionaire, right? Or I just want to have an extra $50,000 a year to put away for my kids' college education. I want to have an extra $50,000 a year to go on vacations. Write them down. Like, let's start there. Write them down.
Yeah, 100%.
All right. Sorry. Get off my soapbox.
Yeah, and there's definitely a lot more conversations that we'll have pertaining to business and whatnot. But it is, as we've talked about, it is difficult. No matter what it is, starting a business in general is difficult. And the one thing you have to know is that there's going to be pain and that you're never going to grow without being uncomfortable. If you stay comfortable, you're just going to always be what you are. It's just the way that life is in general. So a lot of this stuff we talk about with business is applicable to life itself as well.
Yep.
But again, in those times of pain and uncomfortableness, that's when you circle back to your whys.
Yeah.
And why am I doing this? Why am I here at 10 o'clock on a Friday night and waking up at 6 a.m. on a Saturday when I could be off and all my friends are off and they have these jobs that are 9 to 5s? And right, you have to ask yourself those questions. So I think we have to definitely set that as we're looking at the options that we're starting a business or going off on your own for sure.
Yeah, and I think one thing I want to kind of end with and point out too is that we've been talking a lot about how this applies to business, but both of us working in the fire service, I spent 17 years as a firefighter and I worked in multiple different departments. And the work that we're talking about that gets put into building a business is very similar in terms of how you set the goals for your career or where you see yourself in an organization. So if you're in a fire department, where do you see yourself? What do you want to become? Do you want to become a lieutenant? Do you want to be a captain? Do you want to be a senior guy that just is really good at this one job that you do in the fire service? Do you want to be an assistant chief, deputy, fire chief? When you set these goals, you set that with the end in mind. Okay,
Yes.
Set the end in mind. I want to be an assistant chief of operations. Awesome. What Jeff talked about, 5 whys, ask them. Because it's the same process. It's the same thought experiment. The only thing we're removing at this point is it's not a business for profit. We're back into fire department world where it's an organization.
Yes.
And so now we're talking about your career development. We're talking about your leadership development. The questions and the whys are very similar in how they're applied and what they mean to getting to that end. And so whether we're talking about business, whether we're talking about development, I think the essence of what we're talking about here in general is that asking the whys, beginning with the end in mind, connecting these things are going to be that thing you can reach down in the bucket and pull out when you're having those moments of difficulty, you're having that pain, you're struggling to push through, because the resilience and persistence is what's going to get you there.
Right.
And then, yeah, man, I think that wraps it up for me, brother. What else do you want to add? You want to end on something?
Yeah, I think the last piece, and again, I can't stress enough that we'll delve deeper into these topics, but a lot of times your why will develop into your company culture too. So mission statement, guiding principle stuff that we have at Fire Dogs that definitely has built our culture here stemmed from our whys for sure. So it's definitely not something to take lightly, and it's something that will carry on your business and your ventures for many years to come.
You see what Jeff just did there? That's called a segue to a future episode. Well done, McSwole.
Yeah, so I think I've covered my topics of the why and the HE double hockey sticks. Would you want to start a business?
Good stuff, brother.
Thanks for joining Firepreneurs today. We hope that we delivered value in your leadership journey. We humbly ask that you take the time to leave us a 5-star review, as that's how our podcast will rise in rankings and become available to more people. We'd love to hear from you, so you can email us by emailing firepreneurs@gmail.com. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or by watching us on our Firepreneurs YouTube channel. Stay hungry and get after it.